2025 is a pretty stacked year for upcoming MMO releases, with projects like Soulframe, Arcade Chronicles, and Chrono Odyssey in the pipeline, and we see many videos coming out about these MMOs. There's also the perpetual state of copium and content coming out about Ashes of Creation, which I will admit the recent updates on that game have looked fairly promising. However, there are a few smaller projects that get a lot less attention than I think they probably should. There has been a rise of indie developers making games that gamers actually want to play, coupled with some AA studios stepping in and releasing some very solid bangers like Path of Exile 2, for example, that is fulfilling the needs of players that AAA studios just can't seem to scratch. For me personally, a lot of my hopes and dreams for the hobby of gaming as a whole really does rest with those indie studios and those AA developers, as I think that AAA studios are out of touch, and also at this point with the ballooning budgets they're working with and their inability to actually hone in on what players are really wanting to see, it just doesn't seem like they can release anything worth my time. And with a lot of the upcoming games, like specifically Chrono Odyssey and Arcade, I just have a feeling that it's going to be more pay to win trash. With Arcade specifically being involved with Cacao, I have very little faith given how they handled Black Desert when they had their grubby little hands on that. There is a game that I personally am quite excited for, but it's much smaller in scale, and it is being developed by an indie studio out of Brazil. There's not many English-speaking content creators discussing this game on YouTube that I can tell. It seems like it's mostly Brazilian content creators, which makes sense. But I think this game deserves a lot more attention than it's currently getting, because it is doing a lot of things right in my opinion. The art style is absolutely charming, and everything I've been hearing from the developers is exactly what I want to hear. So today I am going to talk a little bit about Drakantos. Right off the bat, I will acknowledge that this game isn't going to be for everyone. It is a top-down fixed camera 2D MMO in the pixel art style. Some people may feel that this style is pretty outdated at this point. I personally find it extremely charming and enjoyable to look at. We can also see that this art style is still able to succeed in 2025 with games like Octopath Traveler or the HD 2D remake of the Dragon Quest games finding a lot of mainstream success. There have been some projects in this art style that have launched into the MMO space. One that comes to mind is Raven Dawn, which sadly ended up being unable to find success. However, from my understanding, this was largely due to just really janky networking and poor combat mechanics. But I do think it's very possible for an MMO like this to find success. The Drakantos development studio, Wingyan Studios, not quite sure if I'm saying that correctly, so I'm just going to refer to them as the Drakantos studio, has been slowly releasing footage of gameplay, whether it be dungeon bosses, overworld traversal, or individual heroes, which we'll touch on later. But everything that I've seen looks like it is a lot of fun. The game is utilizing an action combat system that looks pretty crisp. There's a decent amount of movement. It almost feels reminiscent of Lost Ark, actually. Obviously not on that level because they don't have that budget, but the combat looks very engaging and enjoyable. So I'm just going to run through some of the features that this MMO is bringing to the table and leave it up to you guys as to whether or not you're interested. Also, please like and subscribe. Every little bit counts for me. I'm a very small channel and I'm trying to grow. So getting right into it, Drakantos forgoes the typical class system in favor of a hero-based system that is more reminiscent of MOBA games. Now, some people are immediately going to be turned off by this idea, as many people prefer to have customizability around their character and don't like how restrictive the hero-based class system feels. I think that the Drakantos team is aware of this though, as in their two most recent devlogs, they directly address this and show us some of the customization options that heroes will be having. When they initially developed developed the game, the scope of customization was not planned to be this large, but given all of the interest they've been able to drum up, it has expanded significantly. And what things have turned into is basically, honestly, it is kind of a class-based system. The individual heroes are going to have story elements and specific voices and character arcs, which I think is where the more hero-based aspect comes in, as unlocking heroes does integrate into the story. However, once you have unlocked the hero, you are able to customize their appearance, the armor they're wearing, their hair color, their skin color, their various accessories, and it has resulted in a situation where two people using the same hero can have drastically different physical appearances, and you are very much able to differentiate yourself from others. So I think that largely addresses a lot of the complaints we typically see with the hero-based system, and it honestly looks like at this point it's more akin to Black Desert Online, where you are constricted to your character's gender and overall body shape, but in terms of the armor you are wearing, your hair color, eye color, etc., you have a large degree of customizability and are able to really make your character your own. When Drakantos initially released and development progress started to be publicly shared with people on YouTube, the total gameplay structure seemed more focused on being a hub-based game where you would deploy onto a map, choose your mission, and then go clear a map, go clear a dungeon, or challenge a boss. In their most recent dev update, they announced that they are shifting to a fully open world format, and over time have just become more ambitious about what they feel they can achieve. This honestly makes sense to me personally, as someone who has followed the project. They're a small indie studio. I don't think that they've much experience, and I think that after going through this development process, their confidence has likely grown and they now feel like they're capable of building out an open world. So they stated in their most recent dev update that the original plan was for the game to be more of a dungeon crawler, with cities serving as lobbies and missions, and dungeons forming the core gameplay loop. They've recently decided to expand on this by adding a vast open world and encouraging exploration. From what I've seen on Steam and through their Discord, it sounds like they're planning to litter this open world with hidden chests, side quests that they are planning on trying to make as engaging as possible, and secret locations for players to discover. This personally is extremely exciting to me, as much as I do like my endgame loop of running raids, dungeons, and PvP, I am also a big advocate for making the open world a core part of the gameplay and incentivizing exploration and discovery. I also think this leads to fun social interactions. To be honest, it is a huge turnoff for me when a game has a very dead open world and the only place you can find players is in the central hub queuing into instance-based content. So I'm very happy to see this change. They've also gone through extensively and talked about various mini bosses they will be littering throughout the world with unique drop tables that drop rare pets and mounts. They have explicitly stated that every boss in this game is going to have a unique mount and pet associated with it that you can get to drop, which I think is fantastic. I think one MMO that does this very well is World of Warcraft. I have many issues with that game, but one thing I have always enjoyed about it is that there is a huge breadth of achievable base mounts and cosmetics in that game that you get through gameplay. Personally, it is a huge pet peeve of mine when games put all of their cosmetics in the cash shop and have a very limited selection of gameplay based cosmetics, and typically when that happens, the cosmetics available in the game are significantly uglier than what you can find in the cash shop. Drakantos has put out samples of some of the mounts and pets that you can get from boss drops on their Steam page, in their Discord, and on their YouTube channel, and everything I've seen looks fantastic. I'm extremely excited to try and farm these out, and this will probably be a big activity for me outside of whatever the daily loop ends up being. Speaking of the daily loop, so they haven't gone into a specific structure for an endgame loop per se, but they've actually explicitly stated that they want to stray a little bit away from this. Now, some MMO veterans might have a "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" reaction to this. Personally, I'm excited about this, as The only other video I've released on this channel regarding MMOs is how I feel like the formula is extremely stale, and I'm personally kind of burnt out by it and haven't been engaging in MMOs. What I've always looked for in MMOs and what I long for is a feeling of adventure and a feeling of a living, breathing world that I can exist in terms of, oh, how many daily dungeons do I have to run, my weekly raids, blah, blah, blah. That stuff I feel is just kind of played out. If I want really challenging and engaging PvE fights, I'm gonna go play Monster Hunter. So that's not really what I am focused on, and I think that they recognize this and agree with me to a certain degree. It seems like a large part of the gameplay loop and what you're going to be doing on the day-to-day is engaging in what they call the Adventurers Guild. This seems to be sort of a daily quest giver, I guess you could say, but the actual range of tasks seems to be very different from what we typically see from MMOs. They've listed in one of their dev updates that the tasks you will receive from the Adventurers Guild range from going out and finding something unique, escorting merchants, rescuing kidnapped villagers, finding a wanted boss, defending villages from invaders, or stopping conflicts between other factions. They give a specific example of how you might get a mission to kill an orc leader in an elf map because there is an ongoing conflict and you end up involved in a major battle between two factions to find your target. This kind of reminds me of what I've heard with Guild Wars 2 and their living, breathing world formula, which I know Guild Wars 2 players are constantly raving about, and pretty much every video I've ever seen come out about Guild Wars 2 raves about this feature and views it as an extreme positive. So I think this is very exciting. They also mentioned secondary objectives, so I'm just gonna read off of the dev notes here. In addition to the main objectives for each mission, there can also be various random secondary objectives. Some examples are you are escorting a merchant at night when suddenly you're ambushed by undead monsters, or you enter a cave and come across a cultist ritual. You are collecting an item in the forest and find wild animals being devoured by a griffin, which then starts to attack. These all seem like very cool dynamic events that are gonna go a long way towards making the world feel more alive. They also have explicitly stated that there will be rare special events that can spawn. They have a few listed, one of which, I'm not sure how to say it, is called Nil Varix, which is a demonic clown, which, sidebar, sounds fucking terrifying. He can appear and propose a challenge after you've already completed a mission. They give this example: imagine you've already completed a mission, but can you finish it with a giant hand trying to crush you, or by swapping places with other players, or with a giant magnifying glass where you can't move while being watched. So it sounds like this is a bit of a trickster, similar to Sheogorath, I think is his name, in the Elder Scrolls universe. They give a few other examples of a golden gnome appearing and you need to defeat it before it escapes, or a mercenary offering a proposal to attack other players during a mission, leading your group to raid other players' mission with the goal of eliminating them, and vice versa. So a little bit of PvPvE. And personally, I'm very excited for the idea of the world feeling extremely dynamic and alive. I think it seems like they're trying to put a lot of focus on having an engaging world rather than just constantly going into instance-based content, which is big. The other aspect of MMOs, or rather the second part of the acronym, is RPG. Obviously, a big part of RPGs is builds, specifically how you're crafting your character and how those decisions affect your gameplay. From the information available, it looks like there's going to be 3 components to a build. You have orbs, which you get from defeating bosses and various enemies. This gives you new defensive abilities. You also have artifacts and trophies. Artifacts give you active abilities and trophies give you passive abilities. You can get 2 additional active skills from your artifacts, and then the trophies give you 2 additional passive skills. This, along with your character customization cosmetically, allows you to really make each champion your own. Each champion's going to be able to play differently. I think this provides enough customization to make you feel like your decisions matter, but also avoids the skill bloat that we often see in older, more tab-based MMOs. This game, by virtue of being action combat, is going to be a bit more simple in terms of actual mechanics going into a class, and is going to be placing more emphasis on positioning, timing, etc. Personally, this is enough for me. I think some people might be a bit disappointed with the perceived lack of customization on a build front. I find this okay, especially given that it seems like you're going to be able to unlock multiple champions and each one's going to play pretty dramatically differently. I'll leave that up for you guys to decide aside, I think it's okay. It might not be for everyone. Another topic that is very near and dear to my heart is PvP, player versus player. So I am a big enjoyer of MMO PvP. I'm also very aware that I am in the minority and most people either don't like it at all or want it to be entirely instanced and hate any idea of open world PvP, which I know I mentioned prior that they're going to have some events that can be open world PvP, but I think the vast majority of the game is going to be instance based PvP. Anyways, I want to dive into the PvP that is on offer in this game, as I know there's going to be at least some other people on this earth that, like myself, actually enjoy and want to engage in this system. So Wingin Studios recognizes that PvP, at least specifically open world PvP, is not popular and probably would be at the detriment of their game. This is not going to be an open world PvP game. Personally, I probably would like it more if it was. I'm still excited about it, but I think that for the health and long-term success of this game, it was the right decision not to have it. PvP is going to be confined to more instance-based content with, to my knowledge, 3 different options available. Number 1, and I think the most commonplace version of PvP, is going to be arena PvP. There's going to be a variety of different modes and objectives within this game mode, and they're also going to have a ranked system. I'm not sure what the number of players in each mode is going to be, but I am excited at the idea of ranked PvP. The developers have also mentioned that they will be hosting in-game tournaments, which sounds like some anime arc ass shit, and I am very excited by that idea. I think if there's weekly tournaments, which is what they mentioned, that's going to be a lot of fun and will constantly keep players engaged in that system. So for people like myself who normally feel abandoned and ignored by developers, that is going to be very much evergreen content that we can constantly engage with and enjoy. They're also going to have hell gates, which was touched on a bit earlier in the video, but these are going to be specific areas or events with both PvP and PvE elements. Full details on this have not been revealed yet, but it sounds exciting. Another mode that was touched on earlier in the video is invasions, which is very rare events where in dungeons players can invade others. Again, this one has not been fully revealed yet, but it sounds like a neat way to add a additional layer of unpredictability to a dungeon run and to keep players on their toes and constantly wondering what might come next. Some final little things that they have included that I didn't have enough information on to make a full section on, but it's just cool gameplay features that I think is going to be an enjoyable aspect of this game, is they are going to have something called the data book, which features lore of locations and NPCs that you interact with. They also have a bestiary, which provides lore on the various monsters and tracks the number of monsters that you've defeated. They're also going to have a very extensive side quest system, and they are also going to have an achievement system, which tracks your progress and milestones and rewards you for various challenges and accomplishments throughout the game. They've also said when it comes to customizations, specific gameplay mechanics, and things like that, a lot of that actually is going to be unlocked through exploring the game and completing specific quests. I think this really encourages players to get out there, explore, and get lost in the sauce a little bit, which I think we're oftentimes not encouraged to do. I feel like very much nowadays there's a lot of hand holding and being on rails in games. So the idea that a developer trusts you to have a brain, go out, explore, and find things yourself is going to be fun. Obviously, MMO players are very meta-brained, and I'm sure after like the first week or so, there will be guides online on everything you could possibly want to know about where to unlock and the most efficient way to unlock it, but I don't think this is going to be that type of game. From what I've seen from this game, it kind of feels like it's going to be borderline an isekai anime in a pixel art style with a very strong Lord of the Rings influence, which is right up my alley. That's exactly what I'm looking for at this current time with an MMO, and I'm very excited by it. I really cannot express how much I love the art style. I think the game's beautiful. I've been in the Discord for a while now and have had this game on my Steam wishlist for quite some time, and I'm really looking forward to it coming out. I know that this is probably more of a niche thing, but I kind of have a policy with my channel that I'm going to talk about things I'm genuinely excited about, as I'm not very good at faking it. So let me know what you guys think. I'm super curious if this is just a me thing. I love what I'm seeing. I think that this game is extremely exciting, and it's definitely my most anticipated MMO of 2025. I know obviously like Chrono Odyssey and all those other big budget games are getting the bulk of the attention, but I just think this game is beautiful, and all of the things that they're saying, I like hearing. You guys also like what you're seeing out of what I've talked about today and the footage that I've shown, then go ahead and wishlist the game on Steam, engage with them on Twitter, do whatever you got to do to get them the attention they deserve, in my opinion. Hey y'all, Editing Cheeks here. So I completely neglected to mention that they have announced that they're planning on doing the first closed beta test this July. I am not seeing anything anywhere about how to get into that test. I will be keeping my eyes peeled on that though, as I obviously will be very much wanting to get in there and give this game a go. I'll drop any updates when I get news on that, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that is kind of where they're at in development. Closed beta is coming this July, so just a few months. Otherwise though, thanks for watching. I'm stoked about this game. Yeah, have a good one, you guys. Peace.